Hello, my name is Jack Casady,
Hello, my name is Tim Lefebvre.
and you're watching for Bass Players Only.
.com. Hi everyone, John Liebman here. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com. Coming to you today on location in Rochester Hills, Michigan at the Meadowbrook Amphitheater just before the show of the Tedeschi Trucks Band, the Wood Brothers, and Hot Tuna with our special guests Tim Lefebvre of Tedeschi Trucks and Jack Casady of Hot Tuna. Hello, gentlemen.
Hello.
It's good to see you both. I've got to know you both over the years. You and I did an interview several years ago, got the whole story about the East Coast and then migrating to the West Coast, and you did a lot of amazing things here, and then you did a lot of amazing things there, and you're doing a lot of amazing things now.
Rumor has it.
And
It's an amazing time.
it is. It is an amazing time. And you and I did an interview. It was a little different. We were still trying to figure out formats and things like that. So your interview is actually an audio interview on ForBassPlayersOnly.com, and we put it on YouTube. But if you go to ForBassPlayersOnly.com, put in Jack Casady, Casady,
I'm impressed.
and all the YouTube's the audio will come up. And your name, by the way, I do not find difficult to spell. Lefebvre. Check that out also. But boy, what a special occasion it is to have both of you here at the same time. And I'd like to find out about the tour and how that's going. And in the meantime, though, I'd like to get brought up to date a little bit on what both of you have been up to. And again, the whole story that you did, what you've been up to since whatever that was. One thing in particular I wanted to touch on with you, Tim, is David Bowie. And that must have been a very special experience for you. Tell us about that whole project and what you did with Bowie.
Well, it's interesting because we played, I think it was somehow or another, I got the phone call that we were going to do a record with Bowie in Michigan. I think it was maybe in Sterling Heights, which is another Detroit suburb, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I got the phone call saying, yeah, David Bowie wants to, because basically I have an existing band with the guys who played on the record. We were doing all this jazz stuff and like electronica. And so we were...
Rudder?
No, it's Donnie McCaslin's band. So it's Donnie McCaslin, Mark Giuliana on drums, Jason Linder on keys, and myself. And so anyway, we were, we'd just been doing gigs forever, and somehow Bowie got turned on to us. Well, Maria Schneider turned him on to us. But so we decided to want to do a record. I got the phone call here 2 years ago, 3 years, no, I think it was 3 years ago in Michigan. And so we ended up, we did the record in New York with him in 2015, I think it was. Early 2015, which, and as it turned out, he was pretty sick. So we kind of knew what was going on, but it didn't really affect how he was in the studio, which is pretty crazy.
Well, what was it like in the studio with David Bowie?
Well, you'd be surprised. It wasn't a circus because, we all had to sign NDAs, and there was very few people there. There was the producer Tony Visconti, David's handler Coco Schwab, photographer here and there, Jimmy King, and then his nutritionist, and then the engineer Kevin Killen and the band. Small group, and every day we couldn't say anything about the project, so it was very quiet and it was very workmanlike. We were done by about. David was which I think he was doing anyway, which was just like stopping work at 6 o'clock, 11 to 6, totally civilized. I heard in the old days, like years ago, he'd work 12, 14, 24 hours. But
well, what about musically in the studio? What was that like?
Well, basically the whole thing was that he had sent us demos. He had emailed us demos beforehand. So we kind of went in with the thought we were going to kind of play what he had laid down. But he gave us a lot of space to experiment and do whatever, because he's pretty famous for hiring people for what they do. So, so everybody kind of brought their strong points to it. I mean, for the most part, most of the songs we kind of stuck to what he had put down for us. But there was other songs like the Black Star song, per se, like that. I was allowed to just do whatever the hell I want. And I came back into the control room after one of the takes. We only did, the drums and bass were done after one or two takes. That was it. And they didn't do very much editing at all. So I came back into the control room after one of the takes, and I really pushed it, really stretched it, and they didn't say anything. I was just kind of hearing the playback going, sure. So they kept it. So I to know that these guys were into that kind of thing was like really cool.
That's
So,
got to be
yeah,
quite a memorable experience you'll carry with you for a lifetime.
Right, and you know, it was because it was super quiet and you know very workmanlike. Although Bowie's very funny, as you probably know him, right? Yeah, he was a funny guy. So like we were doing a lot of chop busting because me and the drummer Mark Giuliano were done early, so we sat around all day and you know tried to distract him and made him coffee and stuff. It was funny.
Well, someday you'll have to bring us up to date on some of the funny stuff that people don't often hear about. Jack.
Yes, sir.
We got, like I said, your whole story about Washington, D.C., and all the jazz guys you used to see and the rock guys, and then how Yorma convinced you to come out to San Francisco, and the whole Jefferson Airplane story. You and Yorma have to have known each other for got to be just about 60 years now, right?
That's right.
Yes.
That's right.
Is there anything you don't know about each other?
Well, you know, I think there's a lot we know about each other.
60 years, I bet there is.
Well, but as you live through life, and particularly to get on other areas of your life, I think it's interesting and fun and a joy to watch each other mature and grow into different facets of their life and approach the obstacles and the challenges that come across your path as you know, is now we're in our 70s. You know, I'm 73, he's 76. You know, I'm watching Yorma. He's got a 11-year-old daughter now and a 20-year-old son, and I'm watching him in the fatherly role, and really quite proud and impressed with his teaching skills and the way he likes to impart his knowledge. He's a great reader and a great writer. It's interesting for me to watch he and Vanessa, his wife, and our manager adapt and move within a family circle of which hasn't been present before. So that's always challenging, and it always comes out in the music. I think everything in your life comes out through your fingertips, you know, somehow. And so we were just commenting. I think we're playing better than we've ever played. We're listening better than we've ever listened, and allowing nuances to enter into the music. So it's always a little different every night, you know.
I want to talk about Hot Tuna, but at the risk of hitting on a touchy subject, I don't know if it's a touchy subject or not, but if people don't know, Jefferson Airplane was from about 65 to 72.
Correct.
And then there was Jefferson Starship.
That's different.
And
It's not touchy.
You were not part of that.
No, we were. We continued on with Hot Tuna to explore that area of writing. There was just too many writers. The strength of the Jefferson Airplane is that everybody was a strong personality and a strong writer. I think the weakness was there's only so much time. You know, so when everybody's writing, everybody's got somewhat different directions in material. I think eventually, and you're young and you're still trying to figure out your directions and follow some sort of thread that you're pulling in your music. You know, you want to see where that takes you. Then that just split everybody apart in the band. But I think for its time and for 1965 to 72, it was a terrific and extremely talented band, and we did really unusual things at that time, and so I'm very proud of it. But so Paul started Jefferson Starship as a group of people to continue on his direction, and we started the Hot Tuna.
What's new with Hot Tuna since you and I last spoke a few years ago?
Well, let's see. I think we had put out an album in 2000. We put out an album in 2011, and since then we've been doing a lot of touring and a lot of combinations of musicians. I think what's really what is new is we're revisiting, as in this tour with the Tedeschi Trucks tour here. We're revisiting our trio format, our electric Hot Tuna trio format. Which is a strange animal unto itself, and in my opinion, there's few people that can do a trio well. And one of the reasons I think we can do it well is Yorma's ability to fingerpick in many of the songs that approach, as well as the flat pick more electric songs. But within that, we've developed a sound, and you can't really develop that sound unless you're really in that arena of three playing. As soon as you add another instrument and it's a quartet, then you shift your playing into a different kind of formula. So we've been sort of rediscovering the trio, electric trio format, and we've been doing a lot of acoustic Hot Tuna with my new Diana bass that was built by Tom Rebecki, that we've posted online, and if you go on tomrebecki.com, we made a video about making that bass.
Remember, you and I spoke on the phone a few years ago. At that time, I think you were in the car on your way up Northern California, I think it was.
He's up in Healdsburg, California. And that's dedicated to my late wife Diana, who passed away 4 years ago. But it's when she had passed, I was playing in my den and playing one of my acoustic basses, and I thought, nobody's ever really done any work on the acoustic bass guitar. They're all basically a jumbo guitar with a 4-string neck attached. Nobody's done any science into it. So I started hunting around, and one of my students out at Fur Peace Ranch, that's FURPEACERANCH.com, Jorma Kalkinen and Vanessa Kalkinen's guitar camp that I teach at.
In Ohio, right?
In southeast Ohio, Pomeroy, Ohio, had an interesting bass that was made by a gentleman from Germany, and I had an open front end to the bass where the cutaway was that would face down the neck. That's where the port was, and I had played that, and it was an interesting concept. And then there was the halfling bass that Tom Rebecki had made. With Bobby Vega had done a lot of input on that. What a rascal he is!
I love Bobby. What a pick player, though. Woo.
And so I started looking this stuff up, and I contacted Tom. I figured he was the guy for me, and I drove up to Healdsburg and spent a few days with him, saying, "Listen, I want a brand new concept here. I want to be able to sit across from Jorma with your Martin guitar, his Jorma Kalkinen Select signature Martin guitar."
It's a mouthful. I think just saying Jorma Kalkinen is a mouthful.
And have it sound and hold its own. A stand-up bass, of course, a double bass violin. That the reason it works, it's got that mass. It's basically a mechanical speaker. I've got a bass balalaika that I recorded on a number of Airplane songs and a couple of Hot Tuna songs. It's a huge, massive triangle. It was made in 1938, and it sounds like it. You hit that A note, and across the room you feel it on your leg. So we started talking, and I put the fire onto him. And if you go on tomrebecki.com, you can find out about it. It's really quite a project.
Can you spell Rebecki?
RIBBECKE. And you will find. You will find some interesting aspects about that instrument. One of them is the archtop instrument. One half is flat for the two lower strings, and you got an archtop for the two higher strings, and it matches the output of the instrument. But it sounds really like a bass, and I can play it across from. And I haven't showed you that bass yet. I'll take you on the bus to show it to you. And so, in any case, that's exciting. So in the acoustic world, it's a game changer for me because I can pick this instrument up in my room and play it. And I'm playing, adding hours to my day of playing because it sounds like a real instrument. It's not something I have to plug in. But on the electric side, I have this instrument right here, the Epiphone Jack Casady signature model that came out 20 years ago. This is the 20th anniversary edition. And it came out, I believe it's in the stores in July. And it's the same instrument I've had out for 20 years, except it's a unique color. It's a deep dark red showing the maple finish. And there's some doodads to go with it. I got a custom strap with JC on it, and I've got a little passport book in there that I signed with a signature, little goodies like that, to commemorate the fact that Jim Rosenberg with Epiphone guitars has kept the faith and kept an acoustic, a semi-hollow body electric instrument out on the market for me.
What kind of strings do you play on here?
I use Dean Markley strings, but the strings that come with it are just fine. I've just gotten used to over the years using Dean Markley. I started with that company right the day it started up in California, Northern California. So
That is beautiful. That is a gorgeous work of art.
yeah, and you'll get a chance to hear it.
I look forward to that. Let's fast forward a little bit to today. You're touring with Tedeschi Trucks. You're playing with Jack Casady. I mean, you've been with the band for a while, but 4 years. Wow. So how's the tour going? Tell us about it.
Well, I'll tell you this, Stephen. You can sit here and you can just watch how knowledgeable and personable. Like I'm having so much fun with Jack Casady. I haven't had this much fun with another bass player in a long time. Like I learn every day, just whether he says something or plays it. It's super cool. I mean, literally, it takes a lot for me to be inspired, and I am every day. So thank you, sir. Wasn't expecting that. Not that I was expecting anything, but it's really been incredible every night.
Well,
So.
I've been parking myself on his side of the stage during the sets, and watching slowly. I had no expectations because I hadn't studied his work. So as he starts to pull me into Tim world, and I start to see, it's interesting. I think everybody has to work at how to listen to somebody. It takes effort. And so in the beginning, you hear stuff and you hear a part playing and you hear the whole song. And I'm listening to Susan and Derek and JJ and Falcon and all the backup singers and everybody. There's a lot going on in the band. So as the nights would go on and we'd start to listen to each other, these guys start creeping into our sets, and listen on the side. We start creeping into their sets, listening. But doing more than that, just absorbing where the musicians come from, it's fun to get past that level where you just hear what they're playing and you start to hear how they think about approaching the music. Everybody gets a set of chords, every bass player is different, every trumpet player is different, every guitar player is different, and you hear things differently. So when you're presented with a song, and a lot of these songs that they play are all their original material, and a lot of the songs they're bringing out for the occasion of that night that they rehearse in the afternoon that they're somewhat familiar with, but they're working on some arrangements, and there are other people's songs that everybody likes, and so you hear all of that, preconceptions, the way they've been recorded, and then you try to put something a little new together, and it's fascinating to me to now. I have been 3 weeks out with Tim and listening to how he approaches the songs, and he reminds me a little bit of one of my most favorite bass players, Leroy Hodges, who did all the work with O.V. Wright and Teeny Hodges, the Hodges brothers that were the house band in Memphis with Al Green and all that kind of stuff. But in his playing, is deceptive. He's doing these syncopated things, but it is always in a groove. But most importantly, it's always swinging. And to me, the swing is very important in any bass player's work. It's got to swing, and it doesn't mean stylistically it's got to swing like 40s bebop or something. But I just mean it's got to have not only that groove, but it's got to have that intention. Everything doesn't have to be perfect. You do your pickup lick and you do a little syncopation, and you've got a general line you're doing in your bass world in order to keep the construction of the song together. At the same time, you're doing these things where you pick up. You're playing a little bit with the drummer, and a little bit of snare with the drummer, and a little bit of pickups with the cymbals or something like that. But you're putting your own stuff in there. The drummer picks up off of you, and I watch him work within that rhythm section really well, and it's fascinating to hear how really complicated it can be, but on the surface, perhaps he's not doing as much linear stuff as like I like to do. So when we play together, it's great. We look over and there's we have our territories are clear, so they don't really get in. We're not trying to play the same thing exactly at the same time. What we're trying to try is just treat the instruments like just as separate instruments. There's no reason why you can't have two bass players play without making it all muddy. It only gets muddy if you all try to play the same thing, you know. Although we have played some same things that have come out really great. Yeah.
Tim, how do you feel about what Jack just said? No. What do you think about when you approach the music? Did he hit on anything that surprised you, or that you didn't expect to hear, or hey, I didn't know I was doing that, or what? As far as your approach, what do you think about?
Well, I was going to talk about him for a second. You know, like how I love how he's almost snake-like in the trio format. Like he's playing some bass, and he's playing some melody, and he's playing high, and you know, and it's kind of, you know, it translates to when we're playing together too. It's interesting because you're right. Trio stuff is like you have to fill more space. It's kind of a, you know, it's more than just playing bass. It's like playing melody, and it's playing a lot of other stuff, and like he's brilliant at that, and he's got his own unique way of doing it, and it's like, so every night I'm standing there going back, and you know, I'm in backstage listening. First of all, his tone is insane. It's one of the greatest I've ever heard, literally. And then, you know, then the material that what he's doing behind Jorma and Justin is just like, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like every night, it's a learning experience. So it's really great. And then we get to play together, which normally, you know, and he's right. 99% of the time, it doesn't work. But well, you know,
I hope it does tonight, because we've
been doing it since the beginning of the tour, and it was his idea. It's like, you know, because the three bands do sit-ins, like the Wood Brothers sit in, and Hot Tuna sits in. But like usually, I'll just get off stage and let, you know, usually that's what I would normally do, is like Jack play or let Chris Wood play, but he's like, nah, man, stay up. And so we're up there, and it's really fun. We're snaking around each other, and it's like, you know, we're making our own set of music as well as like and I think it's propelling.
Sounds like a blast. Tell me briefly about your equipment, your gear, your arsenal.
Well, this tour, I mean, I'm with Ampeg, so I have, you know, an old SVT, and I have a spare SVT, Noble DI, the Noble preamps DI, which I love. It's great. Got a couple basses. I got a 63P bass. I have a Moulin 57P, which is kind of new, that just came out. Actually, I don't even know if they're in production yet, but they're out, and I'm trying to get them to make some so he can sell, because it's a great bass. And I also have a Callow Hill. You know, Tim Clunan was a friend of mine, and I have a bunch of his basses.
Strings, amps, effects.
Oh yeah, sure, tons of effects. I'm using Dean Markley. Yeah, I used to use Dean Markley strings. They stopped making flat ones. That was a bummer. They would make great flat ones. But right now I'm using Jim Dunlop flats and rounds. And then pedal-wise, you know, sometimes under Derek, like I like to lay beds of drones. So like I have a couple delay pedals. I have the Jim Dunlop Carbon Copy Bright and the Echoplex, which is cool because like when you run them together, it's like kind of a weird carpety kind of sound. I have my own signature octave pedal from 3 Leaf Audio. It's the Octaver OCTA BVRE. It's cool. It's you know, it's like I always was playing with the OC2, the Boss OC2 made in Japan. Yeah. But you know, like a couple guys who were fans of mine, like would watch me kind of bend over to change the knobs, and like, so he designed one that you didn't have to do that with, so you could just hit the sub, you know, the solo sub by itself. So like I've been using that for a couple of years. And people love it. I mean, people are responding to that like a lot. And then I have an Alien bass station from Analog Alien. So that's like for some fuzz and overdrive stuff, amp simulations, and amp tweaker fuzz too. So just kind of like stuff that's vintagey, but kind of works, makes things sound, you know, kind of fills out that areas.
This is pretty close to the end of the tour. I think you've got 4 or 5 dates left, something like that. Well, this particular tour.
Yeah, we're going to August 4th. We end up. Last few days are Red Rocks. I've never played there, and I hear that's really fun. You and I are going to do the steps, by the way, buddy. Yeah, I hear the steps are fantastic. You know, I love hiking, so we're going to do some step work, and with our amplifiers on our back. That's what we're going to do. Yeah.
What I was getting is what's next? What's coming up?
Well, after this tour. Actually, Jorm and I continue on due to a couple of shows acoustic. If you go on hottuna.com, you can find out what our schedule is. Then for myself, I've been playing a few shows with Peter Rowan because he and I made a record together a few years ago called Dharma Blues. So I've been playing. Before this tour started, the Telluride Bluegrass Festival with him, and a couple other shows in Berkeley. I'm going to do the Grand Targhee on the 12th of August after this tour finishes, and then in the beginning of October, we're doing the Hardly Strictly Bluegrass Festival in San Francisco. Hot Tuna will play there, the Electric Trio. The day before, I'll play with Peter Rowan in acoustic format with his stuff. We close out in November the Fur Peace Ranch full season of teaching the weekend of the 12th. And the following week on the 20th, we start up in the northeast corridor of a Hot Tuna tour for November, December. And again, if you look on hottuna.com, you can find those dates up. Then we're in Jamaica in January. We do some.
Well, that's a nice time to be in Jamaica.
Yeah, it's a bit tough, and but somebody. And I think we're doing the Dark Star Festival in January in Jamaica with them. We'll do some stateside shows in the southeast quarter before that.
How do you keep track of all that? How do you remember?
That's what I have Vanessa Calkin and my manager for. And she reminds me, Jack, we have shows coming up. Be there.
There you go. How about you? What's up? What about, is there something you've always wanted to do that you haven't accomplished yet?
I don't know. No, I can't really complain about much right now, honestly. I mean, feel like I'm touring with one of the best bands out there. Yeah. It's so the rest of the year, we're doing some tours. I'm producing a couple things. I'm involved with this project with my friend Gary Novak and this MC from DC, who's an incredible creative genius. It's kind of like an avant hip hop project called. This guy's name is Kokai. We don't have a project name yet, but the record's in the can, so that's coming out. I'm producing Rachel Eckroth's record, which is going to be good. Actually, the rhythm section and I, the two drummers, JJ Johnson and Falcon, and Kebby Williams, the saxophone player, we did a record. It's available only on vinyl and Bandcamp. We did a record called Whose Hat Is This, which is just free improvisation.
Whose Hat Is This?
Whose Hat Is This, yeah. Okay. And
what's it like playing with two drummers, by the way?
I like it. It's really interesting.
Because I was thinking of that when you were talking about the two basses.
Yeah, it's a heavier thing, but it's super cool because I played with Wayne Krantz for years, and so
right.
Playing with Keith Carlock, who was he kind of created this concept like the rolling drums thing, like that's kind of was pretty influential on a lot of drummers, and so when these guys get going, it's kind of like that to me. So it's really super fun. I mean, I got to keep it a little simpler because that's not a trio. This isn't a trio, so.
Just want to ask you briefly, what do you hear from Kofi, and when do you expect him to be back with the band?
Well, he's doing well. He's
he had, what was it, heart surgery?
Yeah, heart surgery. Yeah, it was pretty serious, but I think it's taking a couple months. Heart surgery's serious. Yeah, so it's heart surgery. So he's he feels good now. He's up and walking around, but it's going to be a minute. You got to really be careful, and so he'll be back. Probably, I think the beginning of the year he'll be back. If I had to guess.
Well, gentlemen, it is an honor and a privilege and a pleasure to sit down with both of you. Much luck, continued success to both of you. Good luck on all that stuff and all your stuff, and congratulations, and thanks for taking a few minutes with us. With Jack Casady and with Tim Lefebvre on location in Rochester Hills, Michigan at the Meadowbrook Amphitheater. I'm John Liebman. You're watching for BassPlayersOnly.com.